join static session. Kind of my idea, so we're leaving it. Taking
You might want to come up here if you're going to project, and just keep in mind that the live stream can only really be the one next to that.
Okay. I'm not certain that it's going to need to project anything. But
Okay.
yeah, there's a lot of interest in this one, right? And that's why we're in this room. A lot of hands went up. Should we put two tables together maybe? I think we'd all put around two tables. Seems like more than enough. Yeah, this that's good enough, I think, that we can feel like we're all around the same place. Yeah, come on in. Give us two, about 10 of us. Speech up as well. Yeah. There's chairs over here as well. People sitting in those chairs? Okay. Just like running on Jekyll, and I saw that like we did. Yeah, with aerobatic. And
so going static, sure. It seems like a nice amount of displayed interest in this, and I'm curious what the reasons are for people. Setting up a WordPress is probably the easiest way to get things running. Why go through instead of the whole generating static pages thing? Yes, I know we're going to save a lot of energy with that, no one else with it, but why go through this? My reason is longevity, and I want to have longevity. I want to have a version of my site which is readable. No, not HTML, plain text, generate from there. What other reasons are there?
So I want to have the best of both worlds, because I want the relational aspect to get to a database where I can say, show me all the posts tagged with this, taken on this date, whatever, those kind of queries. But I am also very much interested in longevity, and I don't think any particular database format is a good bet for the long term. So I want to have database short term with long term static.
Yeah, but what you're describing is an index. You could generate that from the static content as well.
Great.
A few graphs.
True, when you know what you want to do, but the ability to, quickly put together. Also, you say a few greps like, I would know how to do that. So, and I don't. So, yeah, but basically I want the best of both worlds. I want the, relational aspects of the database and the longevity of static files.
It's called a relational database.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, and that's not a insignificant thing. The fact that you can say, get me this, join to that, and do all that, that's quite powerful. So that's the way I'm thinking of it.
I'm very interested in that as well, not only for personal site, but also for like group sites and so on, where you kind of need to have some kind of way to edit at the same time without with region control and without setting on like deadlocks and things. So I think for me, like the idea is either like for simpler cases like a static website through Jekyll or Hugo or whatever, but also what about, for example, taking a WordPress site and making it static without exposing also to the public the access control on actually reaching the backend, so that all the vulnerabilities can be taken out of the site somehow. Performance, CDN for static sites fantastic, very low hosting costs and so on. But also another part of the relation of it is not like the technical relation, but the social relation, which I think is kind of needs to be there because it's part of the convenience and of attractiveness of the bike for the big silos systems. So how we can combine that with static hosting and
right. So that's a bit of a challenge, right? Because you receive a ping, and instead of just storing that in a database or something like that, you've got static files. So what do you do?
Yeah.
So the solution's there. You regenerate static files every time you receive a
Need an agent.
web mention, or you have a third-party service stores your web mentions for you, but you still need to retrieve them and create. At some point, you have to create your static file.
Yeah.
So how are people currently solving this? Web mentions to static sites.
Oh.
Or static sites again. No, but I think there's like Jekyll solutions for web mentions. It's almost like you use a third party like webmentions.io, but somebody correct me on this, but is it that it uses JavaScript then?
I think Alan Gustafsson made something for Jekyll with JavaScript. Yeah.
So it's at runtime.
Client-side JavaScript.
Client-side JavaScript. So you get you got your blog post, that's baked, that's static, but then it uses client-side JavaScript to grab the web mention.
Discuss, but web mentions.
Exactly.
There are a few static generators which can create a host type command. So that could be used as, okay, you use webmention.io, you query it when you generate the page, and you actually generate a static version of that command. So you don't necessarily have to use JavaScript.
But I mean, if you're getting a lot of mentions, the overhead could it potentially be?
In my case, I do want to have some dynamic parts apart from the generator, which then feeds the data as static, and then the generator runs again.
Yeah.
Obviously, this can be interval based, and then you avoid the overhead.
How long does it take to generate the?
Well, I'm not there yet.
Okay.
I want to try my own. I've tried a few existing solutions. I'm not happy with either.
The way of doing that would be quite complex though, because you'd have to link the update as it came in to some auto build feature. So like something that's online that takes like a webhook, gets pinged or something. Well, when a comment comes forward, how do you know to rebuild your site? Unless you manually do it.
You can use things like i.notify. So watch the file system. If there's a new static file in the comment or in the content, rebuild the site. That is what most of the static generators do if you run them as a service.
You still need some auto build feature, even if it's through. Yeah. Which is complicated. All I'm saying is, for me, and probably for you, that's fine. But for some people, that's quite a complex thing to set up as a series of working cogs.
This topic is not necessarily for the beginners.
Well, who's currently using a static site, and what's the software?
So I'm using been using a static site for a couple of months. I'm using Jekyll, and I use Bitbucket, which is a Git repository online. The way I publish it, so what I want to try and do by the end of this weekend is have a clearer path to pulling in other content to my static site, like photos, notes, bookmarks, and things like that. I'm happy using Jekyll and configuring that. The way I use Jekyll is, I think Atlassian, who own Bitbucket, either have very close ties or own a service called Aerobatic, which is a continuous deployment platform, and it ties very closely in with Bitbucket and supports most of the static site generators out there. They have a free plan which is up to 5 deploys in 24 hours. But basically, all I need to do to deploy my site is commit to my repository. So if I create a new post, commit and push to master, Aerobatic listens for that, has a web UI so I can see all the versions of my site, and I can say I want to roll back to 3 versions ago, for example, I want to. But it automatically creates and pushes out and generates a new version. So I've got the automatically generating via a Git repo working, which is great. But I need to figure out how do I, either posse or pasos in my content into that static site.
And that could be more than 5 times a day, right?
Yes, it could be.
Question there. is that you said you want to do photos and similar stuff as well.
Mhm.
Well, if that goes into a repository, that's going to be gigantic.
It is,
Especially,
That's actually what I'm doing currently.
especially if you create cached smaller versions of the image, which is highly recommended if you push the 12.5 original versions.
Exactly. So I'm not sure whether my solution works great for text, but moving on to other things, I'm not sure whether my current solution. I'd probably stay with Jekyll because I love it, but whether I buy some hosting and run it on my own slice or have something that's a bit more dynamic, that's listening to things, pushing
You
things.
could push it into CDN if you're hungry.
Yeah, I mean the Aerobatic is all Amazon Web Services, so it's serving my site via HTTPS via Amazon Web Services for free.
So I'm hosting everything on my own site, including my pictures, which do get committed into the repo, so bad practice. But the alternative is, use something like S3, which is a third-party
So
service.
your repo is gigabytes.
Well, yeah, probably.
So possibly a way to do that would be if you've got S3 with images in and you've got this system you're talking about. Most of I don't know Bitbucket, but like GitHub and similar repo systems usually have webhooks where you can fire like something to make it do a commit.
Mm-hmm.
So you could possibly put an event into the Amazon system because it has a little eventing thing where you could basically as you drag and drop something into your bucket,
Mm-hmm.
an event's fires the webhook, makes the commit happen, rebuilds the site and takes the information about that. But you'd have to have something that interrogates where you store your images.
Mm.
But that's all you need. You just need something that kicks off that process for you. Really, that's what you need to look for.
Mm.
So it sounds like webhooks will play a fairly big part in any sort of static site.
Yeah.
Static site interacting with some kind of thing off the site, whether that's web mentions or photos or whatever. Webhooks feel like
Yeah, it's sort of the simplest API you can imagine. It's just like a ping with a key basically to a service, just basically telling it this something's happened, do this thing for me.
whether that's rebuild my site or grab this.
Within the Jackal site or whatever site generator, you then have to interrogate your image store or your asset store to list a new photo or whatever, but there's ways of doing that.
But I don't necessarily agree with the webhook approach here.
It's just one approach.
If it's a static thing and you do have the option that from where you generate your site, it is where you actually put content to, then you have faster and better options which are looking at the file system modifications.
How smart are the systems like Jekyll or any other static site generators in figuring out what they need to generate? Because we keep saying, oh, then you generate the site. Surely you don't need to generate the whole site.
The magic happens.
Yeah, like surely you only need to generate the bits.
As far as I understand, Google looks at the already present solution. I'm not certain how. It also uses the file system layer, so I think I was fine in Linux. Just check for changes.
Yeah.
And probably the same goes for a few solutions like Helicon, which is
So they don't literally generate the entire
No,
site.
No. So when I rebuild Jekyll, the output is unchanged. This file has changed, or you've changed this one post, so I'm going to change these three things.
So index or
The question is it only access date or generation or create date which they are looking at, or is it the actual content they are looking at? Because that's a big difference.
I'm not sure.
I have not fresh experience with Jekyll, but I think last time I was using it, I think Jekyll is kind of still going through everything and deciding whether it needs to generate. I think Google has something like an AST compiler term somewhere that keeps and then it kind of decides what needs to be refreshed. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how it does that, but also
It does that internally for you, basically.
Yeah.
It's a black box where it just makes sure it does what you need to do.
Yeah, but for normal scenarios, the difference probably is not as much. A few seconds against a few milliseconds.
I suppose the big question is, are the people who are using Jackal, are you actually using it locally on your machine and building locally and then posting up, or are you doing sort of like a web type build as a service somewhere else that goes up to a repository?
When I'm developing it, I'm running it locally, but and when I'm writing my posts, I'm running Jekyll locally with I can always listen, so I can edit my markdown and see it in the browser change. And then when I'm ready to publish, I commit it, and then that updates on my site.
Okay. Because it makes a difference, doesn't it? And then, because obviously if you're trying to do stuff like web mentions or other incoming content, you need something that's maybe a hosted solution outside, and that's where the complexity starts to come in. So,
So Graham at Fairnet was doing that. Like he had his machine where he'd write the post, and he went on holiday to America, South Korea. And his plan was to blog or something, but he didn't bring his laptop. And he had his phone with him, but he couldn't, because he had set up to basically, he did his writing on his own machine and then commit. He kind of sort of ran into that wall and he realized, oh, it isn't as useful as, there is something to being able to walk up to a computer, log in and
do
I suppose the smaller the format, so if you're doing something like a mention or putting on a comment or something like that, then that becomes more and more of a problem, because long form writing you tend to do on your laptop or stuff like that, but short form you really want to be doing mobily on a smaller device probably.
I love having everything. I know there's some mentions of Git repositories being too big for lots of content, but I just love the fact that I didn't, this is my work laptop, I didn't have my site on here, I just cloned out my entire site with images and everything, and it's running now without.
So what's the nightmare scenario? We're not only hosting our own images, but we're committing them to our GitHub repo for our site. What's going to happen?
I mean, is that so much to sin? I mean, we're not running.
So I'm asking. I feel like I was being judged there.
No. That wasn't judgment.
Okay. Gigabytes of repo. Sounded like I'm in for trouble.
No. It goes against what people are saying about repositories, but there is no definite answer why.
Okay.
In my case, I know that I do regenerate the image cache when things change. And in that case, if I commit the images, I end up with a gigantic repository and not gigabytes, but hundreds of gigabytes in the end, within, 10 years of it. So that's not doable. But if you're crafty enough not to do this, then there's no problem.
Okay.
I know that GitHub have reserved the right to pull sites that store too much data when it affects their infrastructure. When they've got to move stuff around internally and duplicate stuff. Obviously, there's infrastructure issues for large repository structures for them. So I know that they do that, because I've seen the blog posts about reserving rights to freeze repositories. So it depends, I suppose, whether you're wanting to store professional photography type files, or large videos, or large amounts of series.
It also depends on the version control system you're using, because sometimes you can hard link stuff together or deduplicate, let's put it that way. Some of the version control systems actually store the files.
Yeah.
And others do a binary aggregation of changes and other things. Black magic again. So there is a thing on most of the file systems, including NTFS, where you can say that these two file contents are the same. They just have separate headers, file headers, and so it's called a hard link. Two separate headers go to the same content. That's a way of deduplication, which could make the repository significantly smaller, but then you're using a functionality of the file system which may not be present on other things, especially not in fat file systems.
Yeah, I mean, you always have the ability to actually host your own repo system.
Yeah, this is nothing. And GitHub did do that. My website is still up.
Yeah.
My local copy is still there. It's just
there's a couple of services out there now where it's relatively easy to set up, like a version of Bitbucket or something like that, and then you can store it yourself.
And that's always the theoretical thing, all these things with Git and stuff.
Yeah.
You don't have to use GitHub. We all do.
So what we touched so far is the interest and why, and we all agree that it's mostly on longevity and readability for the future. That's the reason why we want the static version.
I think some people mentioned performance as well as something that
you can do full page caching, and in that case there's no significant difference.
You can, but if you're currently rebuilding your or generating your index page by querying the database, and then you get What's the modern equivalent of Slashdot? It's Gruber? I don't know.
Hug of Hacker News.
Right, the hug of Hacker, right. Then you could be in trouble, whereas if it's just a static file,
True.
probably not.
But also you can use more easily as CDN with static files rather than cache is something, of course. But then what about if my cache is in Frankfurt and my readers are in Australia?
I think that's a slightly different issue, but geolocation issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So you
generally
have
it's a
one.
faster solution though, isn't it? It's a faster solution because it's static files, it doesn't have the overheads of...
Exactly. It's always going to be a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
For me as well, there's a resilience issue there, because if you're pulling something out of MySQL or Postgres, you've got two moving parts.
Yes.
And if that goes down,
My site is up,
Yeah.
Apache's running,
Yeah.
but that piece over there
That
is
will fall over.
Yeah.
I mean, that sort of links into the fact that it's easier to start with a static site generator usually than it is to go into the complexities of using those multiple parts. So if you're starting up a new blog or starting from scratch because you haven't done it before, it has
Well,
that benefit.
that might be true. In reality, the marketing of, just run WordPress with a click on a container is actually better than the marketing of static sites. That,
You don't have to like be sysadmin for the MySQL or whatever.
So it takes you 5 minutes to write that one post that you're not going to update in the next 2 years, instead of 3 days to actually write the back-end code.
Yeah.
I suppose in the scheme of things though, you've got like service-based sites like WordPress and other sites, and then you go to ones where you want to control the designs and the templates. So the static site come in at that level because it gives you great control over the design, the layout, and playing with the HTML, but not having to do the server-side stuff.
is there any existing solution for static file as service? As in,
Sorry for?
but then you go to somewhere, you say, I want an Ugo website with this theme, and then you just go there and do clicks and magic happens.
Like
So
through a UI rather than
like
files.
the I want a WordPress, you go to DigitalOcean, you click a few buttons and you have a WordPress.
Not anymore. I mean, there are hosting solutions like Netlify or whatever.
Recently, somebody was doing a check and they asked for hosting solutions that were kind of Jekyll friendly or something like that.
For example, you generate the configuration for Jekyll because Jekyll runs, I think, on a YAML config, I'm not certain. To generate it via questionnaires or things like that.
Maybe Webfaction? I've heard that name come up.
I mean, having the static front end is also, highly secure, because what is there to hack, right? There's no, it's HTML, right? I mean, it's the security of the account that is serving the HTML, which is the main issue. So if you can have everything, all the magic happening on a back end, which then pushes, I mean, that's, and plus, it's text. So, I mean, that's gonna, it's more resilient as well. So more resilient, more secure. So you need to sort of think about it in 2 parts. Plus, if things break on the back end, they'll think your site's not been updated, but they won't see missing.
Like you were saying earlier then, right?
Yeah.
That's resilience.
Yeah.
So I think it hasn't been updated anyway.
Well, exactly. But the fact is there won't be bits. Like if you've got a SQL server goes down, you'll see, something pi can't hit the SQL server.
This is what I mean by I'm trying to get the best of both worlds. I want that resilience, but there's bits about having a database I like. So I'm trying to.
I think that might not be that hard actually, because then the public thing is all HTML, and then you can have static content. So basically, to think about that is like, say, even large objects, they're just basic objects sitting somewhere which are referenced by this HTML code. So if they're, if they're sitting on, I don't know, a CDN or something like that, those images are there, and they're an object. So you upload that from the backend, will upload that there and upload the HTML, so it all references each other.
I never directly query the backend.
Yeah, but it never directly. So basically, it's it's a publishing mechanism. It's a bit like the object you're receiving is set in stone. It's not dynamic. A bit like something that's printed. It's printed, and the next day they'll probably print something else, like a newspaper. But there's an actual back end kind of thing. So you'll have a like a you'll have your content system, which is private and, doesn't have to be on the web really. It could be, then again, you're having problems. If you have it local on your laptop, then if your laptop dies or you don't have your laptop, you can't. But you can probably think about,
I think there are a couple of sort of hybrid static sites.
Yeah.
There's I think there's one called Kirby.
Yeah, Kirby's good. Kirby's got a lot of IndieWeb stuff built in.
That has an admin
Yeah.
UI that you can run on the web.
Although, Classic Animate Kirby, he pulled me up so when I described it as a static site generator and he corrected me. It's not a static site generator.
But you could also have a web. You could also either have like some form of mobile code, be it an app or Java on your, like Java or something like that. That could also, push towards the push static files. And that's not that,
That could be achieved with most of the current existing CMSs as well. It's actually a modification of the full page cache existing things. I was thinking to do that because I have a full page cache plugin for my WordPress that instead of actually just using it as a cache, turn it into a static generator, but then I broke into tears and I realized that WordPress is not able to do this properly, just not. So we touched the interesting why, we touched the web mentions and other dynamic problems, which means that we do need either third-party services or some kind of self-hosted service to be able to communicate, to receive web mentions and to interpret other sites. That is a necessity.
Well, it seems like, we were talking about, when I was quizzing on how, when you say rebuild a site, it doesn't really rebuild the whole site, right? You say, no, just the bits that have changed. It feels like on a post-by-post basis, there's a similar thing going on, because once I publish a post, that's probably not changing, unless I edit it. But that post could be receiving many web mentions or likes or all this stuff throughout the day. I don't need to change this bit. It's only however I'm displaying the other bit. So it's almost like a micro view of what's happening at the macro level. Like, all of this stuff stays the same, but this is new. And it's how does a static site handle the this is new bit without having to just make the whole page every time?
Static version of React somehow.
Right, yeah.
Virtual DOM with
Resilience.
Yeah.
You could take a hybrid approach. So if you were like building a static site, for example, using Jackal, and you've got like the web mentions thing, so it does all of that, looks like the web mentions IO, looks after it, and it displays the mentions using JavaScript basically. If you put a little link in, it displays the mentions for it. When you next do a rebuild, you could probably poll the end and then build it into the page.
That might be what Aaron Gustafson's doing, is hybrid.
Temporarily front end.
Temporarily front end, and then the next rebuild blocks it into your.
That's what I was suggesting as well.
Okay. So the up-to-date version you get with client-side JavaScript, but don't worry, that doesn't work because the potentially out-of-date version is baked.
Yeah. And each time you build, you bake.
Yeah.
Basically.
And then what the JavaScript does is look at the baked version and diff.
Whichever you'd want to do.
So would your web mentions be generated as almost related but separate content to your post?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm thinking, right? You've got the permanent bit, and then you've got the updating bit.
So it would be much like the permanent. So for one, let's say for a post that's been up for a few days, and you've got maybe 3/4 of it had already been baked because you've done a run of your static generator. That would come up first, and then you'd allow the JavaScript just to overwrite the comments element, add the few extra ones that have been added until the next bit.
How important is it to auto update on demand, and how important is it just to say, well, at 8 a.m. noon, 4 p.m., 8 p.m. it actually runs a script and then does that, So I mean, I suppose it depends on what kind of content is on there and what people want to see.
This is something I was actually going to bring up in the service worker sessions. We're going to talk about the various use cases. One is that you go to the cache first, and you go to the network if that fails. And yeah, it's like, well, maybe the cache is out of date. I edited that post and I changed that. Does it matter if the user gets the stale one now? Because what you can do once you've served it is go, now go to the network and see if there's a newer version, and then the next time they'll get some. So the user's always seeing like a -1. The user's always seeing the last version, not the current version. And with stuff like blog posts and this kind of content, maybe that's enough. for the sake of performance, for the sake of
The
speed.
exception, if you needed to update it, is always just break the cache and.
Right,
But it'll be the exception.
Right, but you could say, by default, I'm okay with the user seeing something out of date.
Yeah, say something from, because, I mean, unless you need something that's, up to date, critically, but then that's possibly not, I mean, every attempt or every time I have a personal site, right, it gets updated, a couple posts here, a couple posts there, then there's 3 months and there's no activity.
But this is why
You
static
know,
site generator is so great.
And that's the whole thing, right? So
Yeah.
you don't really need, you don't really need like something that's, asking, like polling every minute or, or triggering, having a, cron job triggering everything. Because the fact is, it's, I think, it's the human bit, if this was something that you were actually going to turn into like a business news site or something like that, then yeah, you'd need something different. But if it's your own, it's horses for courses, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's like, if you're building Twitter, you're not going to use a static site generator.
Of course, yeah.
But on blog, the trade-offs kind of
Yeah, so I'm thinking it's, and that probably makes it, also I think the low maintenance and security bit might be good for, just everyone, because the fact it's static and what's out there is secure, might mean that, well, there's a back-end code kind of bit, but then that could,
you could swap it out.
That could swap it out, and then the site is actually public, and so.
Very easy to move around as well, right?
And if there's a vulnerability in the actual code, no one really knows about it because it's behind, it's not touching the world.
Yeah.
We are running out of time.
Yeah, okay.
But I wanted a lot more to add to this.
Okay.
One was that how do one transition from one to another, because most of us start with dynamic generators because that was the thing for the past 10 years, 10 to about whatever years. So transition options, and the second one was the actual format of storing data, which these are two topics we haven't talked. So if we want to go to eat, then we should leave. If we still have a few minutes.
A few minutes.
Okay. So one topic is how do we transition?
Well, is anybody doing a hybrid? Like what I'm just, I want my database, but I still want to.
I am exporting, on the fly and cron-based from WordPress to a static format, which is font matter, YAML plus Markdown. Markdown is strictly Pandoc compatible for longevity.
Do you think that's more long-lasting than HTML?
No, but I believe that it's a good intermediate format between readability and parsability.
Yeah.
Is Markdown the one that most people
I've spent days on looking at restructured text, the TXT org or whatever. There are plenty of solutions. I think Markdown is the least problematic.
So I'm thinking of a hybrid thing as well, because I'm using Perch. And even though Perch has a WYSIWYG in its editor, it's Markdown under the hood. So for me, it's Markdown. Because the other thing is that Perch actually does generate static representations of pages in HTML, but it then puts them in the database. So it does one call to see if the page has been cached, and if not, then rebuilds it. I completely get why Drew did it that way, but I like to take that block out and put it somewhere. So I'm ambivalent. I like to write in Markdown, but I'm completely happy to
How do you deal with meta? Like, how do you display author in the Markdown format? Because this was one of the things I had a long thought of, and originally I wanted to include everything as parsable Markdown. So author as a separate H2 block with its own definition list and all the rest. But I ended up using front matter because it's easier to both read and parse.
So I'm not doing that right now. I mean, this is the site I've got is all storing it in MySQL, so those are separate fields, but the body is in Markdown.
But the problem I found when I translated from one blog to another with this issue is that if you've got something like Markdown, which is great for doing single documents and carries some metadata, it has two problems. It never has quite enough metadata to describe everything that you want to put in a web page, even if you use the extensions with YAML and stuff like that. and then it doesn't describe entities. It doesn't describe relationships between two things. It doesn't describe whether that's the first blog post, the second blog post, or if you've got things like you've got like a place and you reference a place in your from one thing to another. So in the end, I had one system that was in a database and one that wasn't. What I actually ended up doing was switching everything to HTML, marking it all up with microformats, and flattening it all out into pages, and then reading it all back in again. And I used the microformats to describe the blog posts and stuff like that, and the URLs just structures to link the entities together. So if I point you to a place, then I know that was the place which should stored in the place part in my database. What that doesn't do though is go to your thing that you find the markdown format a lot easier to use. But I think you've got quite a big playoff there between a format that is just about single documents and is good at describing a single document, but not good at.
There are extensions to Markdown, but you have to be careful with
Yeah.
Exactly.
What if you have a database that actually has all the attributes? So, everything, author, location, time, weather, whatever, what my cat ate that day, whatever you want, and then have that database entry linked to the post as a static.
Which is a YAML file right next to the Markdown.
There you go.
And then you can merge it together and you end up with
There you
format
go.
plus Markdown.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So is that what you do?
That's what I'm aiming at.
That's what you're aiming
So
at, yeah.
you're basically running a flat file database then.
Because then you've got something which is, you've got flat text here, something highly structured there, and that makes that a lot easier to reference, because then there's a lot less, you're not just, when you're not parsing, random text, you're parsing structured. It's basically a database in any other name.
I wasn't suggesting that was a good solution, the one I told you.
No, I'm just thinking, because that actually works, and that keeps things separate, and then you can, it gets tricky though, because when there's a lot of, it gets tricky because metadata is
Because basically, I think it's a good solution, don't get me wrong, but I think you have to accept that what you're doing is creating a database by a different name, really.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And it has the same problems with fragility and the fact that things can break, and the more complex it becomes, the more hard it is to maintain.
So this is why if I'm going to generate a static file, I want to generate HTML, because I do not want to have to do any further transformations in 10 years' time.
And I don't think there's a solution to this, but I think it's a complex problem.
But it's, plus it's also, your taxonomy, what is it, right, I mean,
It's
that's
probably be individual to you.
well, exactly, and that's the whole, I mean, no one's basically come up with taxonomies.
Common.
Well, no.
But HTML on its own, I have problems with readability.
Human readability?
Yeah.
I think it strikes a good balance. I know what you're talking about, your text is
If you have a syntax highlighter, yes. If you open it in Windows Notepad,
we'll agree to differ. I mean, it depends on the complexity of the HTML, but it's mostly paragraphs, lists, and elements for blog. Just the other things, like, when I say storing the HTML, I would probably, it wouldn't be a full-formed HTML document, as in with the head and the foot would be, HTML snippets, I guess, because I'm definitely going to be changing all that other stuff on my site, sidebar and the navigation and all that stuff. It's that chunk of HTML in the middle.
entry, isn't it?
Exactly. That's it. Yeah. That's it exactly. Store the H entry.
so the H entry, so not HTML.
Yeah, that's true.
You're right.
Be a bit more precise. Storing the HTML fragment.
That's different.
You're right. Because you're right, when you open HTML,
And that
before you even get to the bottom.
flexibility as well then, because obviously you want flexibility to move it into different designs, or this is about the transportability of it, so the suggestion, is the way I do it as well, is to take literally either the H entry or whatever it is.
That means it's not, what I will end up with is not truly static, and I'll still need to do almost Apache includes, right, where I'll be like, grab that entry and insert it into the
So we're just talking about storage formats, and I don't expect things to be the already baked HTML.
But equally, when you say that, you have to, it will come up in a browser and you can read it like in a browser, even if it's just a fragment of HTML it
Yeah.
usually works.
Mm.
So I tend to top, I just top and tail mine with the HTML tag just to make it easier.
Okay.
And then when I put includes in, they go in underneath the round.
Okay,
So it's still a valid HTML document.
This is kind of bytecode in Python. It's not row, it's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that balance, I guess.
Well, actually, quite interesting. I've been thinking about this a lot recently. And one thing I always try to experiment or look around, and things that really attract me is something that always looks a bit like Lisp. So indentation, for instance, and kind of reminds me of that kind of probably spurious quote about anyone implementing a domain, whatever, DSL, is bound to implement Lisp in a lousy way. But yeah, I think that's also a matter of preference, and also someone mentioned before, it depends on the scale. I think if you have like 1,000 pages, and then it's kind of a task to convert to something else in the future if you wanted to switch. If you have like a few dozen pages.
But I think it's because I'm pretty sure that, 10, 20, 30 years time, the final output format will be HTML, that the user will end up seeing. I kind of want the storage format to be close to that.
I'm not certain.
It'll still be HTML?
Um,
You can place the bet.
HTML has.
How come William Lee already has a bet that HTML lasts at least 50 years? He placed the bet when he was at CERN, Tim Berners-Lee.
We'll see.
I can't leave any other format.
I bet in beer and chocolate, nothing else.
Okay. Even after the apocalypse.
Yes. It's gonna worth lots. So one thing that we barely touched is the transitioning, because yes, I have a WordPress site, and I wrote a plugin which does the export, and it's horrible, and it's complex, and it runs from WordPress cron, which runs from cron, and it's complex and it's horrible. So what I also thought about is to use just a vget or httrack or something like that to generate a static site and walk away.
Do it once.
Do it when things change. I know when things change, and I would have the running website somewhere. I generate the static version and publish that and walk away, which is helpful as well. So how does one transition from current solutions to static solutions?
So here's what I've been thinking of, because this is the situation I'm in. I've got a site with 15 years worth of posts. Do I run something that crawls and get me every database entry and build a entry file? Or I was thinking, I kind of wait till a user actually hits a URL. And at that point, I go to the database and I get the post and I assemble my HTML page. At that point, while I'm doing it, make a static version.
We are back to the full page cache export.
No, while I'm doing it, make an entry file and store it in somewhere. So one at a time, almost. It kind of
Over a period of time, you just build
exactly. Like someday it'll be done.
Generation.
Yeah.
But that also has the possibility that you leave entries out.
Yeah. So at some point, what we'll probably have to do is do somehow check how far, is it 70%, is it 80%, and then maybe do the wget thing. But now it's only.
Or there's a number of programs for spidering websites.
Right.
And you could just let one of them loose, and it would then rip through the whole structure for you. And
Just by visiting.
Kicking everything off for you.
Yeah. Just by visiting the URL.
Yeah.
Or
spiders is quite complicated, and it takes time to do if you get around to the whole complexity, because you've got to make sure you don't overload your server. But there's apps like Windows and Mac apps out there that will just do it. So if you wrote what you
done
said,
that actually to back up other people's
work. Back up the whole site for you as it rip through.
Yeah. I can let the Google bot generate it for me.
Yeah. Although the Google bot doesn't always. It decides which ones to go to.
But is that a crazy idea to set it like bit by bit, slowly over time? I'm creating these static.
What are you going to do with it then? Are you going to back it up somewhere, or what when you've created all these files?
Well, the other thing is currently, like I say, what I do is go to the database, get that file, get that data, generate, piece together the HTML page on the fly. So it's all frying, no baking, right? But I could transition to look to see if this entry exists in the file system first.
That's what I'm looking at the moment.
Right, and so over time, transition away, and only if it doesn't exist, go to the database and make it.
The intermediate format, when that's done, turn up the database at the back end. That's what I'm looking at as well.
Yeah.
So you'd have to maybe, would you take the same thing that you do at the moment, which is you
Assemble.
so that when a request comes in, a bit like service workers, it looks fine to file version, serves that on, but also still does the back end request, and then does any updates to that file, just in case you get web mentions or something like that.
Yes, and that brings back what we're saying there about the user might see a slightly stale version,
Of it, but
in looking at the slightly stale version, they make the updated version.
So you still have to do that to keep the updates running.
So this is kind of like, if the tree falls in the forest over here. You don't actually generate the up-to-date version until somebody has looked at the stale version, I guess. Yeah.
Like this case, it would be a file version
Yeah.
rather than the service workers cast version.
Yeah.
It's a similar.
It's very similar to
It
the
is
service
very
worker,
similar,
one of those recipes, yeah. I might end up doing this tomorrow, or at least get started on the...
The one thing I found, which we haven't mentioned, is as you move from one system to another, often, especially if you're coming from WordPress, you have the whole issue about URL structures, which is a really thorny issue to deal with, because systems tend to dictate one way or another about how your URLs are used. So having migrated 4 times, I now have a part of my blog which just is purely dealing with old URL structures and the redirects, which is very painful to maintain. Whatever you find or want to use,
I've got
check that.
Generate an Nginx redirect file and forget about it.
Well, yeah, so my site went from being a homebrewed concoction to WordPress to something I can't remember the name of, back to WordPress, and now on Perch. And a lot of the times I've been pretty lucky with the slugs for the posts. I've been able to transport them across, but there was a point where the blog sat on /blog. So now I've got a whole bunch of HT access rules redirecting people back. And I think that's just a technical bit. I'm going to have to live with that. But
I've got to say, I've got HT access rules from 10 years ago.
Regex is going to save you.
Yeah.
yeah, or
Somebody else writes Regex, not me. Somebody else.
Regex101.com. That's a magical site.
Done it. It all seems sensible at the time, and then 5 minutes later, it falls out of my head.
I was just deciding for 3 years, I still can't remember how to do that properly.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, you're right. URL structures. I think we will always have redirect.
Yes.
Like 10-year-old code sitting.
I have a feeling we summed it up more or less, what this going static includes. If anyone would like to go through the Etherpad going static, just to double check what's being talked about, then we can go to lunch.
Yeah, and looks pretty good. So lunch. A group photo, that's right. Don't go to lunch. We're going to do group photos. Julie, where do you think is the best place to do it?
Will someone stay here and will we close the doors?
I can lock this door.
Okay.
Back in the room? Okay.
Don't do that. Only thing I'll take that. I'll leave the laptop.
I like the cat sticker.
Which one?
Yeah.
I see.
The cat.
This one?
Yeah.
The grumpy cat.
So if you read about intellectual property disputes about the book of cats, it's actually hilarious. It's like Samsung, Apple, but with cats.
Yeah, it's like a Sky, massive people using the Sky now, Sky TV using the Sky now.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, Microsoft both Skype into the Sky.net. Skype logo. I like that. People worship cats when they are writing a book. Shall we make more space?
I think we're all just gonna line up. Well, wherever you think that's. Is this gonna work? You always make the brick background look really good.
I don't know, you can't really see the
That's a
picture.
screen, that's a permanent screen, isn't it? Really? Yeah, we can't really. Oh, never mind. Yeah.
Okay, nothing is very much.
We'll probably have to come in for the edges, I think, right? First one is rounded up, so it's like turn off the. Set that. You're gone.
Cuddle up. Okay, now you need to get closer, like the guy standing outside, just move in a little bit.
Or one row sitting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
More. You it this way.
Just move closer together. Press the warm.
Like this.
And now be happy. Or just pretend.
England.
Move. Yeah, Iggy. Nobody's moving. Please move. Crazy stuff. Woo. Yep.
So, lunch. Survival of the fittest, basically. There's lots of places nearby. See up the street around the corner, there's Bagel Man, there's I'm thinking of sandwich places. There is a press nearby. You might want to take something and bring it down the beach. You might want to find fish and chips on the beach. Beware of the seagull. Yeah, if you bring a sandwich, be very careful. Not kidding. Beware of the seagull. Steal it from your hand.
Here we come at this,